Chapter 71. Are you taking me for the goddess of childbearing? TL. Sungman. The iguana lord didn't even have time to scream. He died on the spot. Everyone was shocked by this scene, their faces full of vigilance and suspicion. Whoever could kill him instantly must be incredibly strong. Is it the cannibal eagle senior? Lin Tian guessed aloud. Logically, he was the only one who could help him here. The iguana lord's corpse split open and fell to the ground, revealing the figure of the person behind it. This person was wearing a white nightgown, somewhat dirty. Their blonde hair was disheveled, as if it hadn't been taken care of in a long time. They looked extremely weak. Their bright blue eyes were wide open, as if they had seen something unbelievable. Finally, found you. After saying this, their eyes rolled back, and they collapsed from exhaustion. Stunned, a group of goblins broke out in goosebumps, panicking and running around. Disaster. The sword saintess has invaded the tribe. Boss, you go first, I'll hold her off. Wah, we're gonna get killed. The goblins had all kinds of reactions, mostly fear and panic. Lin Tian also took a few steps back, shocked and in disbelief, raising his hand to stop them. Everyone calm the hell down. Are you blind? That crazy woman has fainted. Immediately. Gobu Kwang blinked. Seems like it. This person chased us all the way here, took out the iguana lord with a rusty sword while being this weak. Luckily, she passed out. Lin Tian said with lingering fear. Looking at her somewhat dirty but still lovely face, he couldn't help but remember that time. Now, the sword saintess looked more like an angel fallen into the mud. Gobu Kwang picked up his weapons, an axe in one hand and a black iron sword in the other. Let's take her life while she's weak. Gobu Tian, here you go. I don't want to. You do it. It's your weapon. Gobu Tian said, somewhat scared. The two of them then looked at Gobu Shan. He pretended to be very busy, staring at the stool in front of him. Wow, this stool is really stool-like, don't you think, boss? Get lost, you cowards. She's fainted and you don't dare to kill her. Besides, who said to kill her? She's worth much more alive than dead. Tie her up first. Lin Tian said, eyes full of cunning. An angel fallen into the mud. That's just a fallen angel. If she really chose to fall, there was a chance to make her his own. Immediately, they tied up the sword saintess securely. Gobu Yu and the others came over to watch the commotion. Boss, aren't you guys being too cautious? Looking at her, they almost didn't recognize her as a person. She looked more like a cocoon, wrapped in countless ropes, with only her head sticking out. Better safe than sorry. She is the strongest among the young generation in the empire, almost as strong as the Lionheart Emperor. Goblin Slayer spoke up. She had mingled with humans the longest, so her words carried weight. Lin Tian nodded. Exactly, let's see what she wants when she wakes up. Everyone waited anxiously. Their hearts were all tense. After all, this was the sword saintess. They had captured the sword saintess. It would be an incredible story to tell. Just a stroke of luck. One day and night passed. Everyone waited around her, though Lin Tian had already consumed the iguana lord's corpse. The days and nights felt long. Lin Tian was getting impatient. Damn, is she sleeping or unconscious? Upon hearing this, Gobu Yu looked at the sword saintess's sleeping face, carefully reaching out a finger to poke her. Eek tilde. Gobu Yu shivered all over, so soft, like jelly. This poke really broke the sword saintess's dream bubble. She slowly opened her beautiful eyes, looking around in surprise. Careful. Gobu Shan and the others jumped back 10 meters in a flash. Even tied up, they felt being too close was deadly. Lin Tian wasn't as dramatic, but he was very cautious, looking at her seriously. Long time no see, sword saintess. The two of them were old enemies. It was their first time talking so closely. Last time, although they were intimately close, she had been unconscious. Seeing Lin Tian, the sword saintess's eyes seemed to sparkle. Goblin. I finally found you, Goblin. Finally found you. Her sudden excitement scared Lin Tian. He also took a step back, dodging away. What do you want? If you want to fight, I advise you to give up. You're no match for us anymore. Goblin. Goblin. Alicenia seemed like a persistent shadow. Even though her body was tied up, she still wriggled like a fat caterpillar. Twisting her body, she crawled towards Lin Tian little by little. Her speed was incredibly fast. Lin Tian was so scared he bolted, unable to comprehend this bizarre scene. Hey, you lot. I've been feeding you all this time, hold her down. Upon hearing this, Gobu Kwang and the others didn't hesitate. They quickly and anxiously moved behind the sword saintess, grabbing the rope. But in their haste, they grabbed the knot. The sword saintess's entire body was freed from the ropes, which fell off her like peeling an apple. It was as if she had broken free from a seal, instantly darting to Lin Tian's side. It's over. You guys are useless. Lin Tian felt a sinking dread, realizing he had been set up. He still had one life left, but next time he would definitely kill the sword saintess to eliminate future trouble. Gobu Tian slapped his own face in despair. Gobu Kuang. You've killed the boss. Ah, boss. Gobu Kuang was on the verge of tears, panicking and not knowing what to do. The other goblins, filled with despair and helplessness, knelt and wept. It was as if they were already holding a memorial service for Lin Tian. However, to their surprise, the sword saintess did not attack but knelt before Lin Tian. Her eyes were filled with humility and pleading. Goblin, I did not come to fight you. I came to ask, would you give me another child? A blush crept over Alicenia's face, and her voice turned shy and hesitant. The entire place fell silent. So it was just a dream, how thrilling. Gobu Tian exhaled, turning to kick Gobu Kuang. Damn. It wasn't a dream. Goblin Slayer stood in shock. That woman, actually. In the human world, her revered and majestic figure was known to all. Now, she knelt before Lin Tian, begging for love. The most shocked of all was Lin Tian. No way, sword saintess, are you serious? He had guessed she might fall from grace. But falling from grace didn't mean wasting time idly, did it? Who starts by asking someone for a child? Are you taking me for the god of childbearing? I am serious. Our enmity can be wiped clean, but you must give me another child. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. Alicenia's expression was resolute, even threatening. Lin Tian didn't rush to agree, sensing something was off. He asked, you said, another, meaning you bore our child last time. Where is that child now? At this, Alicenia trembled, tears slipping from her beautiful eyes as she looked at him. My lord, I failed to fulfill that punishment. It's those villagers' fault. Please give me another chance, and I'll bear a goblin child and raise it. She ignored everyone else, lost in what she believed to be a divine mandate. This was her punishment for killing dozens of imperial soldiers. The holy sword of the church, passed down for thousands of years, had never been used against its own people. She was the first. The coincidental loss of her holy power made her believe it was divine punishment. Seeing her state, Lin Tian speculated, I see, punishment, another chance, to bear another goblin. Got it, she was taking him for the god of childbearing. Stand up first. To think the proud sword saintess is now so miserable. Well, killing so many of your own people, of course, God would be angry. Lin Tian intentionally rubbed salt in the wound. This way, the sword saintess would think others agreed with her, strengthening her belief. Alicenia became desperate. Please, give me what I ask, I beg you. She started to remove her white nightgown, but Lin Tian stopped her. I didn't say I would give it to you. If you want it, there are conditions. What conditions? I'll agree to anything. Alicenia's unstable mind could think of nothing but having another child and obtaining divine forgiveness. Essentially, she was trying to escape the reality of her killings. Lin Tian thought for a moment, you must obey me, at least during your penance. I believe this also counts as divine punishment. Such powerful combat strength would be a waste not to use. Hearing this, Alicenia agreed without hesitation, if it's divine punishment, I'll complete it. Quickly, I can't wait any longer. She dragged Lin Tian towards a hut. Since she agreed, Lin Tian didn't hold back. After all, such a body was rare. Inside the hut, Alicenia's eyes were dreamy, her blue pupils seemed to sparkle with love. Removing her nightgown, she lay in the straw like a pure white jade, her cheeks flushed. Though her spirit was impatient, her long, pale legs were tightly closed, as if resisting something. Perhaps it was the last shred of dignity of the once noble and holy sword saintess. When Lin Tian's hand parted her legs, the title of saintess ceased to exist. Outside the hut, Gobu Yu and the others listened with their ears perked. The noise even attracted Lilith and her group of vampires. What happened earlier? I fell asleep and missed it. Did an enemy invade? No. This sound seems like. Lilith curiously asked, a bit embarrassed. Goblin Slayer smiled mischievously. Do you know who is making that sound? Chapter 72. The Dream Demon and the Plan to Plunder the City. T.L. Sungman. The Sword Saintess, Alicenia, the woman known as the Guardian Holy Sword of the Empire, is now in the shack before you, begging Lin Tian to give her a child. Goblin Slayer finished speaking, her smile unwavering. Her satisfaction with Lin Tian had reached an unprecedented level. It was truly unexpected to be able to achieve something like this. If this were spread within the empire, one could only imagine the turmoil it would cause. Upon hearing this, Lilith and her group of mercenaries were all dumbfounded and immediately refuted. Stop joking, who would believe such a thing? The sword saintess is someone I admire greatly. Her sense of responsibility, her mission, and her strength are even the strongest among all the sword saints throughout history. In an era where women's status was low, to achieve such a status was unprecedented. Even vampires, even the wife of Count Dracula, Lilith and the others, having lived in the Lionheart Empire for a long time, had immense admiration for the sword saintess. Goblin Slayer sneered and directly dragged her inside. See for yourself, who is she? This. Lilith's eyes widened in disbelief at the woman before her, realizing it was truly her. Lord Sword Saintess, how could you? Her worldview seemed to collapse at that moment. Upon hearing this, Alicenia didn't have the heart to respond. Her eyes had completely turned into heart shapes. Her slender, fair jade hands tightly gripped the weeds beside her, crushing them one handful after another. Lilith even retreated a few steps in fear, exiting the shack. How is this even possible? And the sword saintess is enjoying it. Her heart-shaped eyes were filled with the word desire. Hey, what are you doing in here? Get out! Get out! Lin Tian's voice sounded from the shack, cursing. Goblin Slayer pouted. Oh, don't be like that. I used to admire the sword saintess and wanted to fight alongside her. Fight alongside my ass, go away. Helplessly, Goblin Slayer was still thrown out, thinking she could finally fight alongside the sword saintess. A long time passed. Until the next day, Lin Tian finally walked out of the shack, looking refreshed, though his legs trembled as if he couldn't stand properly when the wind blew. However, he at least seemed spirited. These unreliable legs, Lin Tian muttered in annoyance. Goblin Slayer snickered beside him. It's not your legs, it's clearly your kidneys, right? Where is the sword saintess? Why hasn't she come out? You go see for yourself. Lin Tian said, heading off to rest. Too many good things had happened at once, he needed to sort them out slowly. Not only had he obtained the sword saintess, but he had also truly gained her in every sense, able to make her help him with matters. Upon hearing this, Lilith anxiously rushed to see for herself. She saw Alicenia lying in the shack as if in a faint, her eyes rolled upwards. Lord God, please forgive me. No. Lilith covered her mouth, unable to bear watching any longer. If the people of the Empire saw this, the Imperial family and the church would probably go mad. At this time, Weiju found Lin Tian and asked, Boss, what should we do with the sword saintess? They couldn't let her stay in that dirty and filthy shack forever. It was all unsightly stuff. Arrange for her to stay with me. Take her to change clothes and have a bath, there are human clothes collected over there. Lin Tian thought for a moment and said, arranging her elsewhere with no one watching could be troublesome if she ran away or did something else. Weiju agreed and started to make arrangements. Lin Tian thought that he needed to inform the cannibal eagle about the death of the iguana lord. Hiding it would make people suspect there was something wrong. Then he went to the giant forest, bringing along 2 weak, almost dying humans. Even though Ifreya was a nun, she was still a novice and had much to learn. He planned to help her improve her healing methods someday. Having her as his healer wasn't bad, she was well trained enough anyway. Little Tian, why are you here? The cannibal eagle saw him and flew down from a distant tall tree, its left claw holding a fat white worm. Just dug this out from the tree, it's a unique product of the giant forest, very delicious. Lin Tian looked at the wriggling, furry, maggot-like worm and felt nauseous. He quickly declined, I'm not hungry now, Lord Cannibal Eagle. I just want to tell you something, whether it's good or bad. He said, first throwing the 2 dying humans onto the tree. A branch of the giant tree was over 10 meters wide, like flat ground. The cannibal eagle's eyes lit up, and it immediately threw the worm far away. This thing doesn't seem so tasty after all. What is it? Speak directly. Do you remember the iguana lord you brought earlier? Lin Tian hesitated. The cannibal eagle nodded. Oh, that guy. You must be pissed, right? He was indeed too much. I'll take you to deal with him right away. How dare he threaten to harm you and your kin? Does he think I'm just called Cannibal Eagle for no reason? No, I wanted to tell you that I killed him and his kin. Lin Tian said it so casually. The Cannibal Eagle didn't immediately react. Oh. So you killed him? Wait, what? You killed the Southern Lord. For a moment, he lost his appetite for eating. He stared at Lin Tian in shock. Well, Lin Tian began to explain, but the cannibal eagle interrupted. No need to explain. If I could have killed him, I wouldn't have spared him either. This is troublesome now, but there's still a chance. If you become the Southern Lord, we can still account for it to the Great Tomb. I don't want to be the Lord, that's why I came to you. Just tell them one of my subordinates did it. How about that? Lin Tian grinned, eyeing the two humans. It seemed to suggest that favors come with obligations. Surprisingly, the cannibal eagle was very amenable to this, sighing, your tribe is still in its developing stage and needs your management, so we can only send your subordinate. But, there is a risk. Risk. Why? If you go, I believe you can defeat the competitors for the Southern Lord position, but I'm not sure about your subordinate. The cannibal eagle spoke with a serious expression. With the iguana lord dead, the dream demon from the south will definitely compete for the lord position. He has coveted it for over a century but has never defeated the previous lords. Dream demon. Lin Tian quickly asked what kind of creature it was. The cannibal eagle explained, it's an 8th tier monster that can control others' dreams, born from nightmares. It's not strong in direct combat but excels at manipulating dreams. That's why it never became the Southern Lord. Lin Tian pondered deeply. A dream demon, able to control others' dreams. That was incredible. It was just what he needed. Lord Cannibal Eagle, can you take me to see him quickly? I want to collaborate with him. Lin Tian was a bit excited. If the dream demon could control the sword Saintess's dreams and have her believe that God was instructing her, she would follow without question. This way, she could be completely controlled and turned into a puppet. He also planned to capture a city to get some magic books for Ifreya to enhance her abilities. Having the sword Saintess lead the attack would be perfect. The goblins, plundering nature had been stifled for too long. Hearing this, the cannibal eagle, though puzzled, still took him to the south. This is where the dream demon resides. Before them lay a thorny thicket shrouded in mist, with dried, twisted brambles everywhere, making it impossible to move without getting scratched. A moment of inattention could lead to injury. At this moment, a huge eye lit up in the mist. And a hollow, eerie monster voice sounded, let me see, who needs a sweet dream? The eye moved closer, finally revealing its appearance. It looked like a footless ghost, floating above the thorns, draped in a tattered black robe. Its hood covered not a head but a single large black eye with a red pupil. It had no head, just a head-sized eye. Its hands were withered and purple, resembling tree branches. It emanated a resentful black aura. So it's the cannibal eagle. What do you want? Do you need a sweet dream? The dream demon laughed eerily. Lin Tian spoke first. No, I want to collaborate with you. I'll make you the Southern Lord, and you help me control others' dreams. Upon hearing the term, Southern Lord, the dream demon's pupil shrank into a dot, staring intently at Lin Tian, a small goblin like you dares to talk about making me the Southern Lord. HMPH, the golden iguana you couldn't defeat for years was annihilated by him. The cannibal eagle taunted at this moment. The dream demon found it hard to believe but gave some credence to the cannibal eagle's words, ha ha ha. I'm very willing. Tell me, whose sweet dream do you want me to control? No one special, just a human. Lin Tian said nonchalantly. The dream demon readily agreed. Good. Ha ha ha. The long sinister laugh echoed through the thorny forest. The cannibal eagle then said, I'll go report to the Great Tomb. Are you sure you want him as the Southern Lord? Don't underestimate him because the Iguana Lord. If you fought him in the south, you wouldn't have stood a chance. He implied that the Lord could summon a large number of monsters as helpers. That was the real strength. Lin Tian suddenly raised his hand. Lord Cannibal Eagle, let's wait a bit. I have a new plan. Hearing this, the dream demon retreated a few steps warily. Sensing a threat, what are you planning? Little Tian, the dream demon is a spiritual entity. You can't devour its abilities. If you turn against it, there will be no cooperation. The cannibal eagle, understanding goblin methods. He guessed Lin Tian's intentions. However, Lin Tian ignored him, checking the dream demon's attribute panel. Indeed, an ordinary goblin couldn't devour it, but Lin Tian still had another skill. Abnormal Fusion. Chapter 73. The Fallen Saintess. TL. Sungman. Directly merging him into his own body would allow him to learn the skill of dream control, wouldn't it? Dream Demon. LV84. Race. Undead. Profession. None. Title. Born from Nightmare. Health. 2000. Strength. 690. Defense. 492. Skills. Dream control, bewildering eye, etherealization. Equipment. None. Overall. 3,800. This strength wasn't high among 8th tier monsters, as it couldn't even defeat the Iguana Lord. However, the dream control skill was nearly unbeatable if used to ambush someone. Unless the opponent had a strong willpower and could realize they were in a dream. Lin Tian, with lightning speed, grabbed a dagger and dashed forward. Seeing this, the dream demon hurriedly activated the etherealization skill, a unique advantage of a spiritual entity. Inherently possessing the ability to ignore attacks. Only magical skills could cause harm. Not good. Don't look into his eyes. The cannibal eagle suddenly shouted, but it was too late. The dream demon and Lin Tian locked eyes, immediately activating the bewildering eye, which could forcibly hypnotize a person. Then, it used the dream control skill. Its large eyes emitted a strong red light, all of which poured into Lin Tian's eyes. In an instant, Lin Tian seemed to be in a daze, staggering and falling asleep on the ground. Seeing this, the cannibal eagle's large wings shook, swiftly attacking the dream demon. HMPH, he's doomed, cannibal eagle lord. The dream demon, full of disdain, then dove into Lin Tian's dream. At this moment, Lin Tian, clutching his aching head, opened his eyes and got up, discovering that the surroundings had turned into a desolate, scorching volcano. The distant scene was distorted by the high temperature. He couldn't help but start sweating. The heat was unbearable. Damn, where am I? A volcano. Lin Tian looked around in confusion, seeing no one, only endless volcanic rock paths. Boom. Suddenly, the volcanic crater not far away began to stir. A surge of golden, scalding lava spurted out. A large clump fell at Lin Tian's feet, the ground sizzling and emitting a lot of white smoke. The heat wave made Lin Tian feel like he was melting. He thought it was an accident, but then the volcano erupted. Thousands of degrees of lava flowed out like a flood. Lin Tian kept running, but he couldn't outrun it. He was engulfed and swallowed by the scorching lava. In the boiling lava, he saw his flesh instantly evaporate. The intense burning pain. It felt like he was about to die. In the sky, the dream demon laughed triumphantly. Die forever with your dream, still wanting to kill me. Just a mere. Before it could finish speaking, it saw a fire arrow shot towards it. There was no time to dodge, and it was directly hit and fell. The burning flames made it scream in pain. How is this possible? This trick is good for fooling others, it's too early to think about fooling me. Lin Tian could be seen swimming and bathing in the lava. Indeed, the earlier experience felt more real than reality. If one's will was not firm, they would really think they had died and never wake up again. He roughly understood its ability. If you believed you died in the dream, you would really die. It had tried to make Lin Tian think he was burned to death by the lava. Lin Tian not only didn't die but could control his dream to fly, countless heavenly thunders striking down, shattering the entire dream. Arg. In the dream demon suffered real damage, forcibly expelled from Lin Tian's body, covered in wounds. Lin Tian opened his eyes, returning to reality, and while the dream demon was still disoriented, he attacked with his elemental hand crossbow's fire element. Unable to use etherealization in time, it was ignited again. While injured, it couldn't use etherealization to dodge. It could only scream in pain in the flames, nearly burning to ashes. Lin Tian quickly rushed over and started devouring it, as it couldn't etherealize with the flames. Bite after bite. Finally, he acquired the skill, dream control, but unfortunately, despite eating most of it, he didn't obtain etherealization. That was the divine skill. He reached out to the remaining corpse, saying, abnormal fusion. A burst of black light shone from his palm, compressing the dream demon's body into a small ball, which he absorbed, directly merging it as part of his body. In the future, he could turn into a spirit and enter others' dreams to control them. This was a skill that could only be activated under specific conditions. If an ordinary goblin devoured and acquired this skill, it still wouldn't be able to enter someone else's dreams. P.S. Previously, it was written to be able to give someone dreams. I think it's more appropriate to change it to entering the opponent's dream. Sorry about that, dear readers. Though it seems like an apology, it's actually just padding the word count. Smiles smugly. Little Tian, you're okay. You actually survived the dream demon's power, unlike the iguana lord who suffered greatly. The cannibal eagle exclaimed in amazement. He remembered that the last time the iguana lord came out, it went insane, killing everyone on sight. Who knew what it had experienced inside? Lin Tian shrugged. I'm fine, let's go. This time, The harvest was quite rich, and he didn't lose his lordship. It was fine to let Gobu Shan take over. Moreover, using abnormal fusion for the first time felt quite good. Now, in a sense, he was no longer a goblin but an undead. After parting with the cannibal eagle, Lin Tian returned to the Tian Kuang tribe, planning to bring Gobu Shan to take over the southern lord position. At this point, the sword saintess hadn't woken up yet, having exhausted too much energy. She slept for an entire day. Her sleeping posture was enchanting, though her expression seemed like she was having a nightmare. Lin Tian didn't care and directly activated dream control. In the next second, his body felt light, turning into a wisp of black smoke that entered her mind. Kill that goblin. And punish that whore, the sword saintess. She can't be forgiven. How could she commit such acts while holding a holy position? It's unforgivable. Shame. The greatest shame in the history of the Holy Order. As soon as he entered, he heard a burst of noise. Lin Tian floated in the air, and below was a city with many people gathered in a parade of protest. Listening carefully, he heard someone sobbing. At first glance, he noticed a young girl surrounded in the center of the crowd, wearing a dirty nightgown, her hair disheveled, sitting helplessly on the ground, curled up. She covered her ears tightly, crying. Isn't that the sword saintess? What's with all these people around? Lin Tian couldn't help but feel curious that she would have such a dream. He remembered her saying something about being harmed by the residents. It was easy to infer that the residents had coerced her into killing the goblin she birthed. But she, wanting to atone, couldn't bear to kill it. That's how the conflict and parade arose. The people she had protected now turned against her, making her fear and cry. Lin Tian's lips curled up slightly, thinking it was perfect. This state was ideal for driving her completely towards corruption. Buzz. Suddenly, a beam of golden light appeared in the sky over the city. Lin Tian transformed himself into a figure shrouded in the golden light, with a pair of angel wings and a halo above his head. He looked down at the people below. Then he controlled those people to kneel. Lord God. Lord God has manifested. Hallelujah. God, bless us. Finally seeing God, it's wonderful. Seeing this, Alicenia in her dream gradually stopped crying. But she still sobbed a few times. She slowly raised her head, her soul seemingly touched by the golden light. Having strived for the holy position for half her life, it was the first time she had seen God. How could she not be deeply shaken? Seeing her reaction, Lin Tian thought it was very effective, so he further controlled the people in the dream. A resident suddenly showed a fierce look, pointing at the sword saintess. Look, it's that witch. Desecrating the holy order, the Lord God has come to punish her. Kill her. She deserves to die. Unforgivable. Everyone gritted their teeth, their hateful gazes like blades pressing against the sword saintess's neck, forcing her to step back repeatedly. Suddenly, she found herself at the edge of a cliff with no way back. Finally, Alicenia cried out, Lord God, save me. Please forgive me. Lin Tian waved his hand, and those residents pushing her back seemed to be paused, only the sword saintess could move. Then he spoke in a gentle, holy voice, Holy One, Alicenia, do you know what sins you have committed? I killed the people I was supposed to protect. Alicenia said, kneeling on the ground, tears streaming down her face. But Lin Tian shook his head, killing Imperial soldiers and causing the death of comrades are minor sins. Accept your role and birth the goblins, and I will forgive you. Upon hearing this, Alicenia was first delighted, then surprised. Lord God, have I committed other sins? Looking at the residents, Lin Tian said, you were protecting a bunch of demons, selfish and petty people, greedy, violent, indulging in lust and wealth, holding high power, enjoying resources that should not belong to them. They are the demons. This sin can never be forgiven. Wah. What? Alicenia was in a daze, unable to believe what she heard. The people she protected were actually demons. Thinking carefully, the hardships she had suffered seemed to be caused by them. Without them, her longtime comrades wouldn't have died. She wouldn't have been punished by God. The evil she endured, all granted by him, weren't they demons to her? When she looked ahead again, those residents had indeed turned into red-skinned demons with hideous faces. They moved again, clawing and biting, attacking her. Looking again, Alicenia found herself in her platinum armor with her holy sword. Seeing this, Alicenia didn't hesitate and charged into the crowd, starting a massacre. You demons! Stop speaking! The cold edge of her blade exploded. The demons screamed and fled, but none could escape the sword's judgment, blood flowing everywhere, forming a river. Alicenia, covered in blood, stood on the pile of corpses, panting heavily. But when she saw the bodies clearly, she was so frightened that she collapsed, dropping her sword. How can this be? It wasn't me. Those bodies turned back into residents. Staring at Alicenia, they seemed to be accusing her of her crimes. Just like the battle at Bright Town. Lin Tian quickly comforted her. Child, why are you afraid? Lord God, I killed people. Woo woo woo, Alicenia cried. Lin Tian walked to her, his tall and majestic figure, extending a hand. I told you, they are no different from demons. You protected them countless times, yet they wanted to kill you. Who else but demons would do such a thing? Amidst a series of manipulative words, Alicenia's clouded eyes began to clear, filled with evil and darkness. She stopped crying and extended her hand. I understand, Lord God. This reaching out was like stepping into true darkness and corruption. Lin Tian's eyes flashed with a sense of accomplishment. From now on, you are to slaughter these demons. Then, how can I regain my holy power? Alicenia asked anxiously. In her subconscious, she still wanted God's forgiveness. Lin Tian thought for a moment, when these demons are completely eradicated, and you must also help the one beside you, he is my messenger sent to punish the demons, remember. After speaking, the dream shattered. Only endless darkness remained. Alicenia knelt in the abyss, seemingly never able to climb out. Chapter 74. The Lord's Coronation Ceremony, First Declaration. TL. Sungman. Lin Tian emerged from her dream, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He hadn't expected it to be so exhausting. But at least, he had thoroughly dealt with this sword saintus. In a dream, those with weak wills couldn't distinguish between reality and illusion. In reality, when we dream, it always feels very real, especially when dreaming of falling off a cliff or dropping from a height. The whole person would be jolted awake with fright. If it had been the former sword saintus, she certainly could have noticed something was wrong, but in this state, there was no possibility. From now on, you shall no longer be called the sword saintus. Lin Tian looked at her sleeping form and gave a cold smile. Moments ago, her face had been filled with the expressions of a nightmare, but now it was very peaceful. To be safe, he secretly added another layer of the blood of ruin on her. She must not regain her holy powers. The next day, Alicenia woke up slowly, her emotions much more stable than before. However, the once resolute and sacred look in her eyes now sent chills down one's spine, like an exposed sword. Any carelessness and one would be hurt by her. Seeing she seemed very hungry, Lin Tian brought some roasted meat and fruits. Eat, we need to complete the mission bestowed upon us by God. Stunned, Alicenia's expression shook, looking at him in astonishment. How do you know? Are you the messenger? She thought she had just had a dream, believing it was a conversation with God. But now, she was absolutely certain. The messenger God mentioned by her side was this goblin. Shish, divine will must not be revealed. Lin Tian said, putting on an air of mystery, and prepared to leave after placing the food down. However, Alicenia stopped him. Wait a moment, what should I do next? I will tell you when the time comes. Then, Lin Tian found Ifreya, who was with Gobu Yu and the others. How come you're only level 60? Your overall score is barely 1,000. Master, I'm sorry, I will strive to improve. Ifreya knelt on the ground like a reprimanded dog, quickly apologizing. Lin Tian stroked her fragrant soft hair and asked, how long have you been learning magic? I only studied for a year before following my senior out for training. There is still much I haven't learned, Ifreya explained. That senior was Loader. Lin Tian was slightly surprised. This meant her talent was quite good. Worth continuing to cultivate. He then gathered all the goblins. You all must have been idle for a while. Want to plunder some treasures, women, and food. Boss, absolutely. Gobu Kwang spoke up first. The other goblins were even more restless. Looking at these 5,000 small goblins, over 1,000 big variants, and 100 hero variants, Lin Tian began to feel like a ruler. Because they had enough resources and means to improve their strength. Overall, their strength was much higher than the normal scale. Plus, with the sword saintus, there was no problem repelling the 10,000 elite soldiers from before. However, this time their opponents were much weaker than those 10,000 soldiers. A human city a few hundred miles from the Great Tomb, Clin. He had already scouted it, it could be easily taken down. Lin Tian then ordered, all right, then put on your equipment, we're setting off immediately. The goblins' nature was to plunder, kill, and indulge in desires. Being cooped up here, even Lin Tian was getting restless. It was time to have some fun. Clinforth, are we going to slaughter them? Nearby, Alicenia had already put on the clothes and equipment prepared for her and asked. She was now dressed in pitch-black rusty armor, emitting an aura of evil blackness, contrasting starkly with her pure and holy face. But the cold murderous intent in her eyes was her true nature now. Lin Tian nodded. Are you prepared for that? Naturally, I am prepared for the mission of God. Those damned and detestable demons brought me 10 years of suffering. Alicenia clenched her fists tightly, filled with hatred as she recalled the hardships she endured since becoming the sword saintess. Now, she no longer cared about any responsibilities. It was time for revenge. Lin Tian arranged the battle plan for this operation and instructed Ifreya, you follow me, I'll take you to get some magic books, understand? Thank you immensely, my great master. Ifreya bowed and said firmly. According to intelligence, Clinforth's lord was a white hat mage, far stronger than those gray hat mages before. As a mage, he surely had many magic books, which was why Lin Tian chose to attack here. In the hierarchy of mages, there were the levels of mage apprentice, mage, grand mage, gray hat, purple hat, white hat, archmage, and grand archmage. The army was ready to set off. Lin Tian rode at the front on a dragon, commanding thousands of goblins to advance. This time, almost everyone was mobilized, leaving only Gobu Shan and a small group of goblins back at the tribe. He needed to wait for news from the cannibal eagle and be ready to appoint the southern lord at any moment. Boss, I just remembered, didn't the Great Tomb sign some sort of contract with the church? Gobu Tian flew to Lin Tian at this moment. He had evolved into a leader variant, and his intelligence had greatly increased. Not only him, but the entire tribe of goblins, even the low-level ones, were nearly as intelligent as normal humans. Lin Tian had established a diet that included no raw meat, but plenty of nuts, vegetables, and fish, all beneficial for brain development. The Great Tomb has already broken ties with the church, don't worry. Lin Tian said. He was already a habitual offender, so why fear this? Most importantly, he wanted Alicenia to massacre the city, to show the Lionheart Empire what their guardian holy sword had become. Ellipsis. Clinforth. It was actually a city named after the castle in its center. It was a large town with over 20,000 residents, including many adventurers and soldiers. The hottest topic in the city was the sword saintess giving birth to a goblin and then escaping and disappearing. Inside the castle, a banquet was in progress. On a long rectangular table covered with a red cloth were various delicious dishes. Seated on both sides were over a dozen noble scions with refined manners. At the head of the table sat an elderly man with a serious and solemn expression, the white hat mage, Clin. He slowly cut a piece of tender beef with a knife, eating as he spoke. The Empire's scouts have reported that they predict the sword saintess might be in our city, did you know? In front of him were his offspring and close friends. Unfortunately, they all shook their heads. They spent their days in pleasure and leisure, paying no mind to such matters. Hearing this, a little girl with purple curly hair spoke up. Grandfather, I heard that the sword saintess was defiled by a goblin and is now raising the goblin's child, is that true? Her name was Avril, Clin's granddaughter. Not yet 16, she was already a purple hat mage, a prodigy. The other direct descendants envied her deeply. For the future inheritor of Clinforth would undoubtedly be Avril. At this moment, a richly dressed middle-aged man interrupted. Avril, you're too young to be concerned with these things. Father, what's wrong with it? Saint Jean of the Faroya Empire led her people to liberation from slavery at 17. Avril spoke like a little adult, full of pride. The middle-aged man was about to scold her when Clin interrupted. Avril's concern for the Empire will make her a good inheritor of Clinforth, and I can entrust it to her with peace of mind. In the Lionheart Empire, 16 was already considered an adult. And Avril would be 16 the day after tomorrow, which was also the day she would inherit the lordship of Clinforth. The proposal had already been submitted to the Lionheart Emperor and received approval. After all, a purple hat mage in her teens deserved it, especially as Clin's granddaughter. As for the sword saintess, HMPH, don't follow her example. She desecrated her holy office by raising a goblin in the church. Though I had some rapport with her before, I can't condone such actions. It's an offense to both man and God. Clin swallowed the beef and sighed deeply. Avril sneered, so she's a whore. If I see her, I'll certainly teach her a lesson. Avril, you've gone too far. Suddenly, her father stood up, the sound of clattering dishes ringing harshly. The atmosphere grew tense. But Avril just gave her father a sideways glance. Did I say anything wrong? Don't treat me like a child, rest up and don't strain your back. Compared to her, her father had a mediocre aptitude, barely comprehending magic, and had wasted most of his life. Under everyone's gaze, he could only storm off in anger. Clin continued to dote on her. Calling her a whore isn't wrong, but teaching her a lesson isn't necessary. Report it to the scouts, and she'll face judgment. I understand, grandfather, you're the best, unlike father who only gets angry. Avril grinned, showing her white rabbit teeth. Clin laughed, eat up, rest well for the next few days, and prepare to become the lord. Time flew by. 3 days later, on the castle plaza of Clinforth, a long red carpet was laid out, flanked by armored soldiers. Flowers, music, everything was in place. The plaza was crowded with residents, many holding flowers and cheering in celebration. Long live Lord Avril, with the Clin family protecting us, we're honored. Such a beautiful young lady, probably the youngest lord ever. I envy her future husband. Watch your mouth. But honestly, so beautiful and powerful, it's enviable. As the majestic music played, Avril, in a purple and white rose gown and with her straight hair styled, looked especially stunning. Her youthful innocence added a layer of untouchable holiness. She smiled, revealing her 2 white rabbit teeth, and walked slowly to the front of the plaza. Clin held a golden lord's badge, smiling as he watched her approach. He couldn't stop smiling with joy. Avril stood before him, ready for the ceremony. As the badge was placed on her, she became the lord of the town, the youngest female lord in history. Cheers erupted. Avril, excited, said, "Thank you all for your love. I will do better than grandfather, ensuring happier lives for everyone. And I promise never to desecrate my holy office like the sword saintus." Mention of the sword saintus made the crowd's expressions change. Most cursed, while some felt pity. "We believe in you, Lord Avril. Long live. I want to be Lady Avril's dog. My Avril, sobs." Avril continued, "If anyone finds her, report it immediately. Her crimes are growing, and the church and empire will punish her. Justice will be served to the people. Blasphemy, in a theocratic era, was a crime warranting death to entire families. Daring to defy could mean death to 10 families. Since the Goblin incident in the Imperial City, the sword saintess had been the focus of public outrage. Ha ha ha. Just taking office and already thinking of Clinforth and the Empire, my good granddaughter." Clin couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. From a distance in the sky, Lin Tian observed everything in the city. He sneered, keeping up with current events. "I see. The new lord's first declaration is to capture the sword saintess for the nation. Very well, you'll see her soon enough." Chapter 75. The battle begins. TL. Sungman. Next, Avril continued to deliver her succession speech. From the reactions of the residents, it seemed there were no grievances against her. Lin Tian then stopped paying attention to the situation here and instead surveyed the entire city, looking for a suitable breakthrough point. Now, most of the troops and residents were gathered around the castle. Especially the top-tier combat forces. It seemed any direction could be used to breach the city. No need to overthink it. The entire city had a total of 5,000 troops, only 2,000 of which were fully armored soldiers, the rest were lightly armored. Even with the addition of 1,000 adventurers, Lin Tian was confident. After all, Alice was also here. 3 kilometers outside the city. The Goblin army had already set up camp. Alice, holding the black iron sword previously owned by Kasimov and wearing rusted black armor, looked somewhat sinister. Standing at the forefront of the army, she had a commanding presence. "Gobu Kwang, break the gate." Lin Tian, riding a wyvern, ordered. Led by him, a squad of 10 hero variant goblins carried a massive tree trunk and began to charge. The entire army followed closely behind. The soldiers stationed on the city walls were stunned at the sight. "Damn, goblins. It's a goblin invasion. Hurry and notify the lord." A scout, terrified, ran towards the castle of Clin. The remaining soldiers looked at each other, completely demoralized. They exchanged glances and prepared to flee. Unfortunately, several gunshots rang out as the elves had already climbed onto the walls. With long-barreled muskets made by Lin Tian, they easily dispatched the soldiers. Including the scout. Leah couldn't help but exclaim, "This is much better than bows and arrows." Boom. The thick oak gate emitted a pained groan. With just one strike, it was breached. Because the battering ram was specially made, with an iron spike wrapped around the head, maximizing the impact pressure. Then, the remnants of the gate were thoroughly cleared away. The goblins laughed wickedly as they charged into the city. Even the weakest low-level goblins were clad in plate armor and helmets. This army would make the Empire's commanders sigh in disbelief. The resources within the Great Tomb were abundant and largely untapped, something Lin Tian had utilized well. Entering the city, the goblins didn't immediately rush into residences' homes to start looting and killing like before. They had been ordered to save that for after the battle. With increased intelligence, suppressing their instincts became easier. Lin Tian commanded, "First, destroy the major weapons. Then gather at my location." Saying this, he rode his wyvern to a ballista, dragon flame. A fiery breath incinerated the ballista. This finally alerted the people at Clin Castle. Enemy attack. It's a dragon. A soldier suddenly shouted, looking into the distance. The place erupted into chaos. Residents began fleeing to their homes. On the platform, Avril remained calm. "Everyone, don't panic. Those who can, go to the shelter. Soldiers, prepare to slay the dragon. HMPH, dare to interrupt my granddaughter's succession. You continue, I'll handle this." White Hat Clin said coldly, his face shadowed. Hearing this, the soldiers looked at Avril. In terms of authority, she was now the city lord and they had to listen to her. Avril bowed. "Thank you, grandfather. Everyone, continue. Today is still my birthday. I will distribute food and gifts to everyone in the name of the Clin family." But when Clin left the castle and stood on a high building to observe, he realized something was wrong. In the city, a dense goblin army was quietly approaching. And the southern gate was breached. It had been too noisy in the castle to hear anything. "All soldiers, to battle. Goblin invasion." Clin, ignoring the wyvern, turned and shouted. Lin Tian glanced at him, recognizing the white hat as the strongest magician here. Through the system, he could see Clin's overall strength was 3,900, not weak. When he were younger, it might have even reached 4,000. Surprisingly, the new city lord, Avril, was also young with a combat power of 3,500. No wonder she could become the city lord. Hearing Clin's voice, Avril was momentarily stunned. "Goblins. Soldiers, deal with these low-level monsters quickly. Then come back for drinks." The onlooking residents also relaxed. They had thought it was a dragon invasion, but it was just goblins. No need to worry too much. A large number of soldiers began to move, splitting into several streams, advancing towards different streets. At this moment, Lin Tian had already destroyed all the major weapons and gathered all the goblins on the streets below. Seeing the advancing soldiers, he gave a command, "Attack." Gobu Kwang roared and hurled several fireballs down a distant street, blocking one direction of the enemy. "Kill those over there first." Immediately, all the goblins charged down one street. The fully armored soldiers at the front were stunned when they saw a group of goblins several times their size. They tried to turn back, but the way was blocked, making escape impossible. With one axe strike, Gobu Kwang cleaved a soldier in half, armor and all. The soldiers behind roared and launched an attack, as if making a final stand, shouting about bonds or something. Yet, they were cut down by Gobu Kwang like slicing through melons and vegetables. Seeing soldiers on the adjacent street about to break through the magical flames, the Overlord variant led a team of goblins to slaughter them. The power of the Overlord variant was just slightly weaker than Gobu Kwang. With one fierce roar, dozens of fully armored soldiers were killed instantly. No amount of armor could withstand the sound waves. Thus, the battle began, a mad slaughter. Clin fixed his gaze on Lin Tian, as that, the low-level goblin. One that can control a dragon. So you're the goblin responsible for the sword saint's downfall. As that's so, I didn't expect my reputation to be so great. Lin Tian, riding the dragon, circled around Clin as he spoke. As long as he could disrupt and prevent Clin from attacking, that was enough. Magic was an extremely terrifying form of attack, with wide coverage and strong firepower. If Clin made a move, Lin Tian's goblins wouldn't last long. Clin's eyes were shadowy. HMPH, truly not simple. Interfering so I can't attack, but have you thought of the consequence? That is, you will die here. As he finished speaking, he took out a white crystal block, which emitted a dazzling light. He began chanting, "Super tier magic meteor from beyond." Boom boom boom. A powerful oppressive force descended from the sky. Lin Tian looked up to see a meteor locking onto him, falling and igniting from the friction with the air. He couldn't help but sigh, starting with super tier magic. Truly worthy of a white hat mage, and it's a homing spell. A homing spell couldn't be dodged no matter what. It could only be taken head on, or avoided with an extraordinary movement technique. Lin Tian, riding the wyvern, flew directly towards the distant castle. Because controlling the meteor prevented Clin from using other spells, unless he cancelled the casting himself. HMPH, you can't escape. Clin coldly smiled, preparing to kill Lin Tian with one strike. This would greatly enhance his fame in the Empire. After all, this was the goblin that had bested the sword saintus multiple times. Now the public enemy of the entire empire. Lin Tian said, faster, Xiao Huan. Behind him, the heat wave from the meteor surged closer, about to collide. I'll give you a big gift. Lin Tian coldly smiled, looking at the castle and the residents in the distance. He then signaled Xiao Huan to dive. A dragon. A dragon is coming. Something scarier than the dragon is behind it. It's a meteor. Run. The previously calm residents were now in a panic, but there was nowhere to run. A meteor the size of a house had an impact that would vaporize everything within 100 meters. Just as they were about to crash to the ground, Lin Tian said, use what I taught you. Roar. Xiao Huan breathed dragon flames directly at the ground, creating a nitrogen break. The speed suddenly halted, and with a flap of its wings, they narrowly avoided the meteor's pursuit. Not good. On the city wall, Avril saw the meteor and quickly took out a purple spherical magic crystal, super tier magic space rift. Crack crack crack. The space tore open instantly. A pitch black rift appeared in front of the meteor, which fell directly into it. Avril wiped the fragrant sweat from her forehead, and when she looked at Lin Tian again, he was gone. Failing to carry out his plan, Lin Tian quickly returned to prevent Clin from attacking the goblin army. Seeing him return unscathed, Clin was astonished. Impossible. Where is my meteor? There was no explosion, the meteor couldn't have disappeared for no reason. Lin Tian said irritably, your granddaughter is indeed formidable, otherwise, the castle would have turned to ashes. Lord Clin, we can't hold on much longer. Please, help. Below, a commander's voice rang out. He was severely injured, dragging a broken arm while retreating. The soldiers rushing forward to protect him were either dead or dying. Seeing this, Clin couldn't afford to worry about Lin Tian, and quickly cast a healing spell, super tier magic earth nourishment. This was exactly what Lin Tian had hoped for, as he activated his elemental hand crossbow to its highest wind element setting. Whoosh! A piercing sound of wind shot towards Clin. Clin knew things were bad and had to interrupt his spellcasting, barely blocking the attack with a hastily cast shield. Gritting his teeth in rage, he shouted, damn goblin. If you want to fight, then fight fair. Don't play dirty. Lin Tian shrugged innocently, are you morally blackmailing me? Sorry. Goblins have no morals. We're retreating. Clin, gritting his teeth, had no choice but to say. Continuing like this, the army would be completely consumed. Better to retreat to the castle and hold the position, where he could fight to his full strength. As for the remaining residents, those who hadn't fled to the shelter could only rely on fate. Retreat. The commander shouted. Now, it didn't matter if Clin was still the city lord. Survival was most important. But even the retreat wasn't peaceful. Numerous low-level goblins had already sneaked through the buildings, reaching the soldiers' rear. They would grab a fully armored soldier and bury him alive, or if that failed, they would pour excrement and boiling water into the gaps of the armor. The retreating soldiers were thrown into disarray. Lin Tian found it amusing, even low-level goblins have some combat capability. It's surprising they know to use boiling water. Their intelligence is higher than I thought. Thus, of the 3,000 retreating soldiers, 1,000 were consumed by the low-level goblins. Clin, seeing the corpses scattered all over the city, trembled with rage. But losing control now would disrupt his plans. At his age, such things couldn't make him lose his mind. Enter the castle. Block the gate. Clin Castle had an additional wall of its own, as it had once been just a small castle. It gradually developed into a town. Thus, the goblins were kept outside the wall. Chapter 76. Hope or Despair. TL. Sungman. Lin Tian commanded once more, Gobu Kwang, you guys grab your weapons. Soon, they brought over the battering ram. Despite striking the sturdy gate several times, it did not break. Lin Tian flew up and discovered that behind the gate was a round giant stone, larger than the gate itself. No wonder. Shoot. Kill them. At this moment, an icy, hateful voice from atop the city wall echoed. A large number of archers appeared. Dense arrows rained down on the goblin army like a downpour. Fortunately, every goblin wore armor, and only a few were killed. The rest all retreated outside the range of the arrows. Inside Clin Castle, thousands of residents gathered in the square, watching the soldiers return in disarray. They all fell into deep fear. They had already retreated here. This meant that Clin Castle was about to fall. The soldiers' commander was on the verge of collapse. Are these really goblins? They are clearly an elite force. All wearing armor and wielding iron weapons. Especially the high-tier ones, their strength is unmatched. We lost 3,000 men, and they only lost a few hundred. And they outnumber us 2 to 3 times. Hearing this, the residents became even more terrified. They didn't know what to do. Someone suddenly murmured, if only the sword saintus were here. But then, they closed their mouth again. Suddenly, a young but confident female voice rang out, everyone, have you forgotten my earlier declaration? Our Clin family will be at the forefront. We won't let anything happen to you. Avril appeared on the city wall. Accompanying her were numerous Clin family mages. With us here, this place will be the strongest fortress. No one will be able to step inside. Right, Grandpa. Avril smiled lightly as she spoke. Her words provided deep comfort to everyone, and her smile seemed to melt their fears away. Moved to tears, they couldn't help but express their gratitude. Lord Avril, we owe you so much. She's so young, yet so responsible and mission-driven, it's deeply touching. I can't believe the one standing there is just a young girl who has just come of age. May the Lord bless her. Clin also came to the wall, loudly proclaiming, with us here, those goblins dare not come close. By this time, Lin Tian had reorganized his troops and approached with shields. With a few more strikes, the gate could still be broken. Impenetrable fortress. In Lin Tian's eyes, an impenetrable fortress was not worth attacking. He thrived on exploiting the weak. Why bully the weak if you could bully the strong? What kind of logic is that? Suddenly, fireballs descended from the sky. Even the armored goblins couldn't withstand the heat. Following this, lightning and explosions erupted. A massive magical assault rained down. Lin Tian frowned and ordered, Gobu Kuang, retreat. Only a few goblins managed to escape. Of the 20 hero variants carrying the battering ram, 12 died. Avril smiled in satisfaction. See, we easily killed over 10 high-tier ones. They won't dare come over again. With mages leading, the focus was on covering firepower. Everyone's anxious hearts calmed down. Clin mocked, what, the goblins who defeated the sword saintus are only this capable? If not for a surprise attack, you'd all be dead. Lin Tian, riding a flying dragon at a safe distance, said, I didn't want to do this, but you forced me. HMPH, so what if I force you? What can you do? Avril, having learned to interject, responded with a proud and disdainful look on her face. Curious, she asked, Grandpa, who was speaking? Apart from seeing a dragon, she couldn't see Lin Tian on its back. Clin didn't explain but said, anyway, it was he who defeated the sword saintus. Avril's lips curled into a smile, so, if I defeat him, does that mean I'm stronger than the sword saintus? Ha ha ha, my dear granddaughter, you're right. He's just a stepping stone on your path to glory. The Clin family started chatting leisurely. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed, emitting a chilling aura. Turning back, he said, follow me, the rest stay here. He then led Gobu Kuang, Gobu Tian, Gobu Shan, and dozens of hero variants toward the sanctuary. In the castle square, a resident nervously remarked, Lord Avril, they're not heading to. Don't worry, the sanctuary has our magical barrier. They can't break it, Avril confidently replied. But soon, Clin's old face showed a heavy expression, damn. The barrier is breaking. In the distant part of the city, a pale yellow glow shot into the sky. It was a sign that the barrier was breaking. Outside the sanctuary, a pale yellow magic barrier composed of countless diamond-shaped light blocks blocked Lin Tian and his group. Even when Lin Tian used all his strength to stab with his dagger, he couldn't leave a mark and was instead flung away. The other hero variants attacked madly, clanging away for a long time with no effect. It looked as thin as a cicada's wing. But it was as thick as a steel wall. At this moment, Gobu Kuang said, Boss, you all step back and let me try. High-pressure domain. Centered around him, the air seemed to vibrate. 1 second, 10 seconds, the surrounding ground began to collapse, with many cracks appearing. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. A tiny crack started to appear in a corner of the barrier. Finally, with a snap, it completely shattered. There is a saying, fight magic with magic. Under Gobu Kuang's high-pressure domain, the surrounding gravity slowly intensified. The activation took a long time, but once accumulated, even steel would be compressed into iron sheets. The magic barrier, like tempered glass, was very hard. But if you concentrated the attack on one point, the whole glass would shatter instantly. The last wooden door could now be easily opened. What came into view were pairs of terrified eyes, bloodshot, staring at the leader. People's hearts raced, and their breathing was rapid and irregular. There were despairing old men and women holding children, hurriedly burying their children's faces in their chests, not daring to let them see the scene before them. A few men, their bodies trembling, summoned all their courage to step forward. But before they got close, they were pierced by bone spikes rising from the ground. They wanted to be heroes, but heroes always had to die. The evolved Gobu Shan could now control the range of the evil bones even further. The men's tragic deaths ignited a bomb within the crowd. The children and women cried out in fear, wanting to escape, but there was no place to run in the crowded sanctuary of over 10,000 people. Where is Lord Avril? Why isn't she here? Can someone save us? Anyone? The sword Saintess. I wish the sword Saintess were here to save us. Looking at these people, Lin Tian's eyes were filled with coldness and indifference. Do it. Then, Gobu Tian slowly closed the wooden door. Since the people in the castle wouldn't come out, they had to find a way to make them come out. In distant Clin castle, Avril and the others could hear the cries from the sanctuary. The residents and soldiers behind were restless and fearful. Because their families and children were in the sanctuary. The commander couldn't help but shout, Lord. Old Lord. Open the gate, we need to save them. If we go out now, we will surely die. This is our last stronghold. Clin gritted his teeth, not expecting the magic barrier he spent years creating to break so quickly. The screams sounded like a funeral dirge, echoing in the ears of the residents and soldiers. Pain and anger were clouding their minds. Finally, a soldier couldn't bear it any longer. I'm going to save them. Who's with me? Let's go. A resident steeled his heart. Count me in. Let's go. What are you doing? Stop it. I can protect you here. Avril pleaded, but it was no use. Soldiers and residents together pushed aside the giant stone, opened the gate, and rushed out. Their families were being slaughtered. They had no mind to linger and survive here. Avril and the others couldn't understand because their families weren't in the sanctuary. Seeing this, the previously ordered army launched a full-scale assault. The two sides clashed like torrents. Clin exclaimed with delight, a great opportunity. With the high-tier ones mostly gone, quickly eliminate these goblins. But before he could finish his sentence, gunshots rang out. The archers on the wall, including 3 mages, fell simultaneously. Each had a bloody hole in their head. Avril, looking at her dead father, was full of grief. Father. Who did this? In the distance, Leah and a large group of elves were holding simple muskets, reloading. Muskets had a longer range and greater power than handguns. Previously, the magic barrier blocked the bullets. Now was the perfect time to strike. The soldiers and residents pouring out were slaughtered due to the narrow gate exit. They killed as many as came out. Clin had to use a high-tier magical shield to protect himself, or he would be shot. He couldn't spare any effort to attack. Avril, in deep sorrow, asked, why are elves mixed with goblins, and why is their attack so accurate and powerful? I don't know, but elves also hate humans. Clin explained. Humans often captured elves as female slaves, and the most expensive sex trade involved elves. At this moment, several mages who thought they could dodge bullets with their movements fell dead on the spot. Leah laughed, putting the musket to her lips and blowing on it. Are they mocking my aim? Ridiculous. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Clin gritted his teeth and said, Ultimate magic gate of heaven. His magic orb shot up a white beam. A massive magical wall separated the two spaces. The wall was huge, connecting heaven and earth, spanning half the city horizontally. It looked like a gate to heaven. No matter how the goblins attacked, it remained unmoved. Leah fired at it, and the iron bullets shattered to pieces. Avril, still holding her father and siblings' bodies, was full of sorrow. The soldiers and residents suffered heavy casualties, the survivors retreating back. Despair and fear spread throughout the castle. Clin, sweating profusely, said in pain, Avril, you must escape, the gate of heaven won't last long. At this moment, a soldier ran over anxiously, Lord Avril, the back door of the castle is blocked by goblins. After dealing with the people in the sanctuary, Lin Tian anticipated the next move and guarded the back door in advance. At this moment, Clin could barely stand, almost collapsing. The gate of heaven flickered, on the verge of closing. Why is this happening? How can these goblins be so strong? Clin, head bowed, was full of unwillingness. This battle was almost one-sided, as if they were being toyed with. The residents were utterly panicked. Lord Avril, can't you think of something? Can someone save us? Are we just going to wait for death? Lord, didn't you promise to protect us in your declaration? Avril, too, was full of tears. Surrounded by the bodies of her relatives. Her father had just used his life to shield her from a bullet. She had no heart left to continue fighting, being only 16. Only Clin remained steadfast, maintaining the gate of heaven and quickly thinking of a plan. But with danger ahead and behind, their forces destroyed. There was no strength left to resist. More terrifying than death was the process of waiting for death. Look, that person on the rooftop. At this moment, a resident shouted excitedly, pointing to a rooftop outside the city. A figure in black rusty armor stood there silently, seemingly out of place with everything else. The breeze blew, revealing her golden hair covering her face. Many people recognized her on the spot. Sword Saintess. Alicenia. We're saved. Ha ha ha, we're saved. Inside the city, the people rejoiced wildly, almost dancing with joy. They laughed with twisted and mad glee. The feeling of surviving a disaster, the sense of security from escaping death. If asked who could bring this to the Lionheart Empire, there was only one person. The guardian holy sword of the Empire, tirelessly protecting the people day and night, Alicenia. Chapter 77. The Sword of Killing. T.L. Sungman. Is it her? We. Clin's expression showed a moment of relief, but then he wavered. Previously, Avril had declared that she would capture the Sword Saintess and give an explanation to the entire nation. It was a move to win the people's hearts. But now, in this moment of despair, everyone rejoiced at the appearance of the Sword Saintess. Even Avril was internally struggling and embarrassed. Grandfather, will she save us? Clin's old face couldn't muster a smile as he responded in a low voice, she should. No, she definitely will. In the current situation, even he thought they were certainly doomed. Blocked from front and back, their army had suffered heavy casualties. They were being beaten by the goblins. Sword Saintess, please save us. Woo woo woo, my Sword Saintess, you've finally come. We can rely on no one but you. We're saved, we're saved. I really thought I was going to die. The residents spoke excitedly, reaching out and cheering. They were now very welcoming to Alice. Seeing their current demeanor, Alice's gaze turned cold. She had been hiding, listening to their conversations. They had been clamoring to nail her to the cross for atonement. The god wants me to live well, so now I only need to complete the mission given by the god. I've had enough of these demons in human skin. Alice murmured as she drew out the black longsword. She directly activated a skill, super tier sword skill Iron Gale. Swish. Several huge, tangible sword chi slashed towards the gate of heaven. The previously incredibly sturdy defense shattered like paper at that moment. Clin was shocked and fell off the city wall, completely stunned. The Sword Saintess, she attacked my gate of heaven. Even after being struck, he still couldn't believe it. When he looked up, Alice was standing at the highest gate of the city wall, holding a longsword. Her blue eyes emitted an extremely intense, icy killing intent. Like ancient ice, it seemed that everyone she saw would die here. Clin's heart trembled. Ignoring the pain from his fall, he hurriedly jumped up. Sword Saintess, what are you doing? Alice leapt out, but her strike missed. Without speaking, she attacked Clin again. High-tier magic defense. Snap. With a single strike, Clin's most proud defensive magic shattered into sparkling fragments. Fragile as anything. Seeing this, Clin steeled his heart and shouted, Avril, you all hide in the castle quickly. The Sword Saintess is acting strangely. Hurry. He had a strong sense that the Sword Saintess intended to kill him, to kill all of them. Upon hearing this, the remaining members of Avril's family quickly fled first. How could they care about anyone else? The remaining residents and soldiers were all stunned, fearfully moving closer to the Sword Saintess. Because a large number of goblins had already broken through the gate and swarmed into the castle square. But Lin Tian had given the order. They were not to act now. These people were to be killed by the Sword Saintess. The residents were finally relieved because Alice was blocking all the goblins. They felt completely safe. Even the children stopped crying. Lin Tian rode a flying dragon and slowly landed on the city wall, saying, These people, to you, are demons, Alice. For 10 years, you endured daily hardship and pain to protect them, dedicating yourself fully. Yet, because of one failure, they kept saying you blasphemed and should be nailed to the cross. If they're not demons, who are? Remember, the god is with you. Upon hearing this, Alice slowly turned her head, looking at the residents. This look scared the residents so much their hearts almost stopped. They all felt something was wrong. Sword, Saintess, don't listen to the goblin's temptation. We didn't say we wanted to nail you to the cross. Yes, 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 that was Avril saying it to gain prestige. That young woman is the real villain. If you want to kill her. We still believe in you. The residents fearfully explained. But Alice didn't believe any of it. She had already heard it while hiding. Indeed, it was Avril who said it, but it was met with enthusiastic approval from all the residents. They even said they would build a monument to warn future generations not to blaspheme. Alice completely turned around, facing the residents and soldiers, holding her sword, slowly approaching. The commander of the soldiers stepped forward to beg for mercy. Saintess, we were wrong just now. We can. Suddenly, the commander's voice stopped abruptly. A blood line appeared across his head. Then, half of his head slid to the ground. He died on the spot. I will use the methods I once used to slaughter monsters to deal with you, demons. Alice directly charged into the crowd, cutting them down like slicing vegetables. Her sword never had a moment to dry, always stained with hot blood. Miserable screams echoed throughout the castle square. No, Saintess. Don't kill me, I apologize. I'm sorry. Please spare me. We admit our mistakes, can you let me go? Let my child go at least. A large number of residents knelt behind, praying that Alice would show great mercy. But she had never shown mercy to monsters before. It was the same now. To her, humans were demons, monsters. No matter how much they begged, it couldn't quell the anger that had been building up inside her. After a brief commotion, the square fell silent. Except for the goblins in the back, there were no signs of life among the thousands of people. Lin Tian couldn't help but remark, HMPH, this plot is somewhat similar to Jesus back then, isn't it? Saving people all his life, only to be nailed to the cross by those he saved. However, Alicenia did not possess the unwavering kindness of Jesus. Rather than being forced to death, she preferred others to die. Inside the castle, Avril and the others were packing up, preparing to escape through a secret passage. Lin Tian had already sent Gobu Kwang and the others inside to hunt them down. Then, he hurried to follow, to avoid them being overpowered. In a luxurious bedroom, Avril was packing her father's relics. Why did it turn out like this? Even the Saintess betrayed humanity. Goblin, I will kill you. At that moment, the sound of the floor shaking came from outside the bedroom. Avril immediately became alert, holding a magic orb. Boom. Gobu Kwang smashed through the wall, sending Avril flying. Fortunately, she landed on the bed, or she would have lost half her life. Heh heh heh. The boss will be very happy if I capture her, right? Seeing Avril struggling to get up on the bed, Gobu Kwang's eyes lit up. However, she was a magic genius. She reacted immediately. High-tier magic multiple light wheels. Several light wheels slashed towards Gobu Kwang, forcing him to retreat repeatedly. His axe could only block part of his body, and he was covered in blood marks. If it weren't for his high defense and tough skin, he would have been shredded. Regaining control, Avril directly activated Infinite Fire Mode, High-tier Magic Punishing Spear. High-tier Magic Air Cannon. High-tier Magic Ominous Hand. Ellipsis. For a moment, Gobu Kwang was forced to retreat, unable to get close. He also cast a spell, Evil Hand. Two arms glowing with blue flames extended from his back, reaching out towards Avril. Grabbing one of her small feet, he swung her towards the wall. She spat blood from the impact, feeling dizzy. She couldn't resist for a moment. Another hand grabbed her neck, trying to choke her unconscious and take her away. Her face began to turn purple. Super tier magic soul drain. In despair, Avril used a large amount of energy to cast a super tier magic she hadn't fully mastered. Anything that touched her had its soul temporarily drawn out. A control clearing and counter control skill. Gobu Kwang's eyes rolled back, losing consciousness and standing still. Avril was also thrown to the ground, panting as she crawled up, feeling both relieved and proud. HMPH, want to kill me? You go die first, you ugly goblin. She then cast a magic light ball, sending Gobu Kwang flying dozens of meters away. He broke through the wall and flew from the high castle to the outer square. Avril used a magic potion to recover from the pain and fatigue. She cursed, that damned slut, she actually betrayed humanity. Otherwise, how could I have fallen to this? When I become a grand archmage, I'll settle the score one by one. With a face full of unwillingness and anger, Avril prepared to go to the secret room exit to meet her family. When she got downstairs, she found goblins had already entered. Did the people outside die so quickly? Avril found it hard to believe. Suddenly, a hero variant, along with several big variants, charged upstairs. Faced with such an attack, she calmly activated her magic orb, high-tier magic multiple light wheels. In an instant, the group of goblins was dismembered into pieces. With a face of disdain, Avril walked down the stairs through the corpses, but then noticed something. A small green figure flashed by the door. Another ant. Avril followed, not because she would chase down a low-level goblin. It just happened to be on her way to the secret room. When she reached the living room door, she saw a small figure cowering and crying behind the door. Don't kill me. Woo woo woo. I won't dare anymore. Can you spare me? The small goblin cried, trembling, with snot and tears all over its face. Pitiful and disgusting. Avril frowned in disdain. HMPH, today you're lucky. Don't let me see you again. She ignored it and walked directly to the basement. It was too disgusting. Killing it would dirty her hands. Besides, meeting her family was more important. The soldiers outside were all dead, and if the goblin army broke in, it would be dangerous. But just as she passed by, the small goblin's eyes revealed a cold, evil killing intent. It suddenly jumped onto Avril's back, biting down hard. Avril screamed in pain, almost fainting, full of terror. Ah! It hurts. What is this? Holding her neck, she staggered back, leaning against the wall, barely able to stand. From her neck, blood flowed profusely, uncontrollably. Am I going to die? Damn little goblin. I don't want to die. Avril's pupils trembled, her body convulsing, feeling suffocated. Seeing the warm blood on her hands, her legs gave way, and she sat on the ground. With no strength left, she couldn't use high-tier healing magic, and the low-tier ones were useless. She started crying loudly, "Grandfather, someone save me, I'm dying." With her crying, her heart beat faster, pumping blood out even quicker. Her neck turned into a river of blood. She hated the little goblin in front of her for pretending to be pitiful. It's all your fault, you evil, despicable goblin. Why did you bite me? I didn't even kill you. Avril wept, as if uttering her final words. The small goblin suddenly spoke. Kekaki, little girl, your biggest mistake was being too arrogant. He was not a low-level monster. He was Lin Tian. Chapter 78. Great Gains, World-Class Magic. TL. Sungman. Without lifting a finger, he could make a flower wither. Lin Tian suspected that this Clin castle dungeon might be too weak. The reason he acted cautiously was to avoid attracting Clin and the others from the basement due to the noise of a fight. In such a confined space, it would be disadvantageous for him. A single spell could be impossible to dodge or block. Avril was already crying in fear, the pain in the process of waiting for death nearly driving her to collapse. She had no idea that this small goblin could be so cruel. His pitiful appearance when begging for mercy had caused her to let her guard down. Lin Tian said, "Didn't find the magic book, but finding something better than a magic book isn't bad either. Come on, let's take advantage of the moment." Take advantage of the moment, meant literally. Otherwise, it might not feel as good later when it cooled down. But Avril didn't understand. Don't eat me, I'm not tasty, can you save me? I can give you the magic book, I don't want to die, boo-hoo. At this moment, she was crying like a child. Helpless enough to seek help from a goblin. Still quite naive, huh? Have you ever encountered a goblin before? Lin Tian approached her like a big brother, asking as he got closer. Avril shook her head desperately. No, can you save me? The magic book is in the castle's secret room, I can take you there as long as you save me, don't eat me. Seeing her like this, anyone would feel pity. How could one bear to eat such a cute and helpless girl? Lin Tian patted her little head, lifted her soft long hair, and smelled it. It had the fragrance of a young girl. A feeling that made one dizzy. Then he comforted her. Don't worry, I won't eat you, I will take good care of you. Thank you for caring for me. Avril foolishly started thanking him. However, as Lin Tian got closer and closer, she felt a bit uneasy. What are you going to do? Lin Tian slowly pulled down her custom-made low-cut purple dress. Avril had already become weak due to excessive blood loss. She couldn't resist no matter what others did to her, but her consciousness was very clear. Lin Tian did not use the God's blessing ability because there was no need. He also wanted to let this proud little girl know how cruel society could be. No, didn't you say you were going to save me? I can take you to find the magic book. Avril said in a panic, starting to reason with him. A pitiful look as harmless as a human or animal. Lin Tian said coldly. You didn't act like this before, did you? For prestige, you even wanted to nail the sword Saintess to death. You also said you would destroy any monsters that dared to come close, right? Wipe out the entire tribe of any monster that came near. This guy was purely a scheming bitch. Avril quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I only said that to gain support. It wasn't my intention. You have to believe me, please believe me. But now, even if Lin Tian believed her, he wouldn't stop. And he wouldn't believe her anyway. As the coldness spread over her body, Avril was extremely scared. Seeing this piece of white jade-like skin, like a budding flower. It was hard for anyone to bear plucking it. As if. Lin Tian laughed coldly. Not bear to pluck it. That's nonsense. He was a goblin. He sought the thrill of sin. Avril didn't even have the strength to lift her head, she had no idea what was happening. Only waves of sharp pain. An unprecedented feeling bombarded her brain. Wandering between pleasure and pain, she gradually lost consciousness. Health. 200. Attack. 80. Defense. 100. At this moment, the system's voice sounded. Lin Tian couldn't care less about this, but suddenly, he heard voices from below. Avril, are you there? Why is it taking so long to pack up? Clin pushed aside a panel and came up from the secret room, full of worry. However, the scene before his eyes shocked him to the core. Holding his head, he roared, "Ah! What is this goblin doing?" My Avril. A powerful magical force exploded. It forcibly pushed Lin Tian back over 10 meters, watching him warily. Immediately after, several magic orbs shot towards him. Lin Tian quickly used the brutal roar skill, but he changed the shape of his mouth, shouting the strong sound waves to the side. This way, he would be propelled backward by the recoil. Boom. The sound waves destroyed a large section of the wall. Lin Tian flew backward, avoiding the magic orb's attack. It was essentially a displacement skill. Clin fell into madness, holding Avril's now cold body, crying bitterly, "Goblin! You evil race, I will wipe all of you out." After saying this, he prepared to continue attacking. Fight until death. But suddenly, Clin felt a chill on his back. A very familiar chill. Frightened, he quickly used a high-level magic shield. Like before, it was easily shattered, and he was sent flying. Alice walked into the castle slowly, her expression calm as water. Behind her lay countless corpses. Clin was terrified by this sight. It was obvious from the corpses that they had been instantly killed by sharp blades. He exclaimed in shock, Did you kill those people?" He had thought that at least the sword Saintess wouldn't slaughter the residents. The soldiers could hold out for a while. No wonder a goblin had broken into the castle so quickly, leading to Avril's death. "So what if I did?" Alice said indifferently, without a trace of guilt. Clin felt like he was going crazy. "You've killed so many people you were supposed to protect, and you just say, so what? You're unworthy of being the sword Saintess. Unworthy of the holy sword. You desecrate the holy office. You should be nailed to the cross." Ah! Clin's mouth was still open, but his voice abruptly stopped. A black longsword flew over, piercing his mouth and pinning him to the wall. It wasn't over yet. Alice went outside and picked up a few iron swords. Clin, now unable to speak, looked terrified, his body trembling as if begging for mercy. Unfortunately, a cold longsword flew in, pinning his left hand to the wall. Then his right hand. Both feet. Clin experienced the death of Jesus firsthand. Alice then looked at Lin Tian. Is there anyone else to kill? Basically, no. Thanks for your hard work. Lin Tian was a bit scared. The white hat magician didn't even have a chance to use magic. Just like that, he was taken out. The blackened sword Saintess was even more terrifying than before. Lin Tian then found the panel Clin had pushed aside and saw the wooden ladder leading to the secret room. Going down, there was a long stone path. At the end was a small room. On the bookshelf, there were indeed many magic books, along with many gold coins and various miscellaneous items. Pushing open the door, it led outside. Lin Tian frowned slightly as he saw a few figures already fleeing in the distance, almost out of sight. He could chase them, but he thought better of it. Even if it wasn't reported in detail, it would eventually be known. After all, a city had been captured. Freya, take a look and see which magic books are good, take them all. Lin Tian called her over, pointing to the bookshelf in the secret room. He then picked up a book himself to take a look. Only then did he realize that the Clin family had been a family of wizards for hundreds of years. Tracing back over 100 years, they even had a grand archmage. No wonder they dared to build a castle and claim lordship. They had the strength for it. At this time, Ifreya looked at the magic books in shock. There are hundreds of high-level magic skills, 10 super-level, and 3 ultimate-level spells. 1 world-class magic spell. Oh, Lin Tian was also curious. Ifreya, moved, said, "Thank you, master. Once I master these, I will serve you even better." Saying this, she knelt down and kissed Lin Tian's foot. "All right, take them all." Lin Tian also took some gold. Although he couldn't use money in the human world, gold was also used in the non-human civilizations. Like the Dwarf Kingdom, the Elf Kingdom, and so on. Outside, the bodies of those soldiers had been arranged by Gobu Shan to be eaten by the almost evolving big variants. The low-level goblins could only eat ordinary residents. Their existence was meant to be cannon fodder, born from magical creatures, inherently weak. Even if they evolved, they were still weak. Feeding high-level soldiers to them was a waste of resources. After this, over 100 big variants evolved into hero variants. There were also many other resource gains. The most regrettable thing was the city itself. But now they were the focus of the Lionheart Empire and the church, so there was no way they could occupy a city to live in. Lin Tian was not arrogant enough to confront the entire empire and the church. Though perhaps, in a year or so. By then, the army they developed would be able to confront any opponent. Chapter 79. Declare War. Take back Alicenia. TL. Sungman. Ellipsis. Lion King City. Also known as the Imperial City. Those Imperial scouts who had been investigating Clinforth fled back in a frenzy. The sword Saintess had betrayed humanity, and Clinforth had completely fallen. The enemy hadn't even attacked yet, and the internal collapse had already begun. Several scouts ran straight to the temple, shouting, "Your Majesty! It's over. It's all over." Charles II furrowed his brow and reprimanded them, "Why are you panicking? Everyone, calm down. Is there any news of Alicenia?" Upon hearing this, the scouts looked at each other nervously, filled with fear. Finally, someone spoke, "Your Majesty, Alicenia has betrayed us." Charles II's expression changed slightly, not yet grasping the severity of the situation. Betrayed? How so? The scouts, unwilling to believe it themselves, regretfully said, "Goblins invaded Clinforth." At the last moment of resistance by the white hat mage Clin, the sword Saintess shattered his gate of heaven and killed thousands of soldiers and civilians, including the white hat mage Clin. This information was overwhelming for Charles II, leaving him momentarily stunned on the throne. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" One scout asked worriedly. After a long pause, Charles II questioned, "Are you sure there is no mistake? Alicenia, how could she join the goblins, let alone massacre soldiers and civilians?" Scouts, in essence, were reconnaissance soldiers and spies, the most crucial intelligence members of a nation. Each one's professional standards were top-notch, making lying impossible. But now, Charles II preferred to doubt the scouts rather than believe such a thing. The scouts, not knowing how to prove it, replied, "Your Majesty, we wouldn't deceive you." Charles II's expression began to turn frantic, unable to accept such news. To soothe his mind, he could only suspect the scouts. Just as he considered this, another group of people entered. Seeing that the newcomers were members of the Clin family who had escaped earlier, Charles II's heart sank. His normally steady hands, resting on the throne, began to tremble slightly. "Your Majesty, Clinforth has fallen." The Clin family members' words echoed those of the scouts. Charles II's face darkened, and he remained silent for a long time. Finally, he drew the imperial sword, angrily shouting, "If one word of what you said is false, I will surely have you executed. Speak. Is it true?" "It's true, Your Majesty." The crowd hurriedly nodded in fear. "Ah, goblins. Do you want to destroy my Lionheart Empire? Dream on. I will make you pay for everything." Charles II roared, completely losing his imperial aura. The blow was too much to bear. Losing Clinforth was one thing, but for the noble and pure sword Saintess to slaughter a city for goblins, to turn her blade against the very people she once fought to protect, was absurd. The scouts were saddened. "Your Majesty, please don't be like this. None of us could have imagined that a group of goblins could create such havoc." Charles II panted in anger, his low voice echoing in the grand temple like a burning lion. He finally spoke, "Gather all the ministers here. I'm going to see the old pope." What? Hearing this, everyone realized the situation had escalated to the highest level. They all withdrew. Charles II straightened his clothes and went directly to the church. However, He was not qualified to meet the old Pope and could only ask the Holy Mother or a cardinal to convey his message. The Holy Mother was shocked. No way, how could Alicenia? This is all our fault. She could roughly guess the reason. The people's persecution and the forced violence to kill that goblin infant had pushed Alicenia to the brink. But she didn't expect her to decide so quickly, even turning her sword against the Empire's citizens. Charles II's face was grim, unable to speak, filled with frustration. Seeing this, the Holy Mother said, "Given the situation, I will ask the Pope what he thinks." "No, directly invite the Pope to our Empire's Temple Council," Charles II corrected firmly. The Holy Mother was stunned. "All right, I will notify him." It seemed the Lionheart Empire was about to change drastically. Ellipsis. In the Empire's temple, barons, lords, ministers, commanders, and generals, all gathered together. The atmosphere in the entire hall was incredibly oppressive. Charles II, wearing the golden lion crown, leaned back in the highest seat, resting his hand on it. He exuded authority without anger. Everyone was waiting for one person to arrive. Finally, outside the main doors, an elderly man in a platinum robe and holy garments appeared slowly. He leaned on a staff made of golden crystal, wearing a golden cross helmet, with a cross necklace on his chest. Half of his face was exposed outside the hat, showing some white beard, giving him a kind appearance. The Holy Mother and a cardinal lightly supported him. Despite being over 120 years old, his eyes shone with a fiery golden light. "Holy Majesty, Your Holiness." As he stepped into the temple, everyone bowed deeply. Even Charles II rose from the throne to greet this transcendent figure, offering the highest respect. Additionally, another throne was placed beside him. Supported, the Pope slowly walked up and sat down, side by side with the Empire's Emperor. The Holy Mother and the Cardinal stood beside him. The ministers below wore solemn expressions, their eyes filled with gravity. It had been a long time since such a serious council had been convened. And even the old Pope was invited. It was unimaginable how important this must be. Finally, Charles II spoke. "Your Holiness, everyone, this council is of great importance. Many of you may not know yet that Clinforth has fallen." "What? Impossible. Isn't the Lord of Clinforth a white hat magician? And it's an entire family of magicians." Everyone was shocked, murmuring among themselves. However, Charles II continued, "This, in my opinion, is not the most important issue." The cardinal's face changed slightly. "Your Majesty, isn't this important?" He didn't know what had happened. Others were equally incredulous. What could be more significant than the fall of a city? The sword saintus, Alicenia, she betrayed humanity, joined the Goblin tribe, and personally massacred Clinforth. The weight of these words almost crushed everyone. For a moment, the hall was eerily silent. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief at these words. But it came from the mouth of the king. Duke Clin staggered, almost kneeling. "Your Majesty, are you certain? How is this possible? Alicenia is such a noble and pure person, she couldn't have slaughtered a city." "Clin, enough. Do you not even believe the words of His Majesty?" At this moment, the Empire's Imperial Knight Commander, Hamlet, sternly said. The others trembled. Many of them admired, even revered the sword saintus. This news was like a thunderbolt. Many questioned it aloud. Charles II's face darkened with regret. "If only I had been more resolute at the time, I shouldn't have been such a merciful king. It led to this situation. Ah, that damned goblin." Clin, with tears streaming down his face, grabbed his hair and knelt on the ground, crying. His goddess, idol, role model, and beloved had been taken away by a goblin. It hurt more than death. Likewise, several young people were crying uncontrollably, angry to the point of fainting. A few Imperial soldiers came in and took them away, their emotions out of control. Charles II did not blame them and understood very well. Alicenia was too important to this country, to the people, to them all. The oppressive atmosphere was suffocating. No one expected Alicenia's situation to end this way. Painful and heart-wrenching. The cardinal's expression was full of guilt. "Your Majesty, please punish me. This is all my fault. If he hadn't tried to kill that goblin infant, these things wouldn't have happened." Charles II's face was grim, his displeasure evident. "Forget it, it's not your fault, no need to blame yourself. Everyone. Today, for our Lionheart Empire, is the most painful day. It's the most profound lesson in history. We must remember it deeply, engraved in our bones and never forget. The reason for gathering everyone here is only one: to declare all-out war on the Goblin tribe. To reclaim Alicenia. To rebuild Clinforth." Charles II's voice suddenly became high-pitched and solemn as he stood up from the throne, raising his hand and shouting. Everyone immediately responded, declare war on the goblins. Reclaim Alicenia. Rebuild Clinforth. At this moment, a deep, elderly voice rang out, and everyone felt a sense of calm. The Pope spoke. I understand now. The reason your Majesty called me here is for this. You are determined, even if it means declaring war on the Great Tomb. I am old, but I must secure a peaceful and stable country for my people before I die. The Great Tomb remains a threat that cannot be ignored. Charles II said firmly. No one disagreed, but their hands trembled slightly. The horrors within were beyond comparison to the goblins. Everyone had to prepare for death. They were facing ultimate darkness and ultimate evil. The old Pope remained silent, seemingly deep in thought, finally making up his mind. Notify all church members across the continent to return. Understood. Hearing this, everyone was filled with hope. The Pope's words meant he would mobilize the full power of the church to assist. God bless. Victory will belong to the Lionheart Empire once again. Chapter 80. The Lord of the Great Tomb. TL. Sungman. Ellipsis. The Tian Quang tribe. A large group of goblins lined up, pulling carts, and transporting a vast amount of supplies back. Food, drinks, treasures, clothes, weapons, equipment, defensive facilities, and so on. They brought back everything they could carry. As soon as Lin Tian returned, he noticed the cannibal eagle had been waiting in the tribe for a long time. Seeing him come back, the cannibal eagle immediately said sternly, Little Tian, the Lord has ordered me to take you into the Great Tomb. Let's go. Don't be too nervous. Go inside. Lin Tian's eyes lit up. He wanted to take a look. He was now a valuable piece they couldn't afford to lose. All right. Go Weiju, arrange and handle the supplies. Keep an eye on Alicenia. After saying this, he mounted the flying dragon and followed the cannibal eagle to the Great Tomb. As they went deeper, the oppressive atmosphere around them filled every pore. On the ground, there were more 5th and 6th tier monsters, even many 8th tier ones. Although the cannibal eagle was also 8th tier, it was an intelligent species. At this point, there was a huge clearing in the distance, with a city built within, housing many buildings. It looked quite prosperous, about twice the size of Bright Town. Lin Tian couldn't help but ask, Lord, what tribe is that? It seems so prosperous here. That is a castle built by the werewolves. The Wolf King is a 10th tier monster, but it is oppressed by the church and has to survive here, not under the Great Tomb's control. The cannibal eagle explained. Hearing about the werewolves, Lin Tian suddenly thought of vampires, specifically the green-haired, bald Dracula. After all, there was some deep connection between the two races. Some said the progenitor of the werewolves and the progenitor of the vampires were twin brothers. Others said werewolves were a mutant branch of vampires. Just like how goblins also had mutations. Lin Tian could only find out by asking later. However, he did learn that in the Great Tomb, the top combat power wasn't just the 4 lords and the monsters within. There were many other different races. Lin Tian responded with an, oh, and didn't ask more. Let's continue. After a long while, they arrived at the deepest part of the Great Tomb, known as the End of the World. A huge black building, resembling the gates of an ancient Roman palace with intricate carvings, sat at the foot of a large mountain on the desolate, dark ground. And the most shocking sight was the endless abyss behind the mountain. No, it wasn't accurate to describe it as an abyss. Because the other side couldn't be seen at all, only a void and black mist surrounded it. It extended to the distant horizon. No one knew what lay on the other side of the void or if there was another side at all. No one knew if the void abyss had a bottom or what was at the bottom. That is the Great Tomb. The cannibal eagle pointed to the mountain. At first glance, Lin Tian thought the Great Tomb looked more like a tombstone for the void abyss behind it. At this moment, the cannibal eagle hurriedly pushed Lin Tian. Don't stare at the void abyss, you might get sucked in. Ah, oh. Lin Tian shook his head and snapped out of it, feeling a bit scared. The feeling just now was strange, as if a pair of eyes in the void abyss were staring at him. Was this what it meant when you stare into the abyss stares back? But Lin Tian was sure those were the eyes of a living being, not a literary metaphor. Without thinking much, he parked the flying dragon at the entrance and followed the cannibal eagle into the Great Tomb. Just after entering the gate, they saw white bones scattered everywhere. Cobwebs were all over. The smell of mold hit them. However, the passage was quite spacious, at least over 10 meters high. It must have been built by very tall monsters. After passing through the passage, they finally arrived at a place similar to an underground palace. Several stone pillars stood, the place was empty, yet grand. The cannibal eagle pointed to the center and said, "Let's go, the Lord is waiting for you below." In the center of the hall was a slightly sunken round platform, carved with strange patterns. As they stepped onto it, the platform started to descend. It was like an elevator. Who knew how many levels they went down? When the scene before Lin Tian's eyes appeared, his heart tightened. A giant eye was staring at him. It was as big as Lin Tian himself. This giant's head had only one eye, but it had a nose and mouth, and its body was at least 4 or 5 meters tall. A cyclops. Lin Tian checked the information through the system and learned its strength was 3,000. Not particularly strong. The cyclops bent its waist as if welcoming them. Looking around, Lin Tian felt an intense sense of oppression. This wasn't a great tomb, it was a monster farm. Even though he had seen much of the world, these creatures frightened him. The environment was similar to the first layer of the underground palace. It was vast and high. But here, many monsters gathered. There were minotaurs with hard, armored skin, indescribable monsters full of tentacles. 3-headed dogs, hydras, various beastmen, and several ragged, eyeless old women fighting over a single eye. It was as bizarre as it could get. The sight made Lin Tian feel uncomfortable both mentally and physically. He was a goblin and found these creatures repulsively ugly. However, there were also beautiful women. Standing at the front left of this group of monsters was a tall, curvaceous woman with an enchanting and pure face. Her every expression was full of provocation and disdain. She wore only a sheer, light gown that barely covered her private areas, making her beauty both hidden and visible. Her white legs and jade feet were exposed, causing a stir in one's heart. Sharp black nails added a hint of sinister evil. Lin Tian immediately recognized her kind. A succubus. A 10th-tier monster, mysterious and powerful. Those iconic black horns, heart-shaped tail tip, and demon wings. Her red heart-shaped pupils could melt anyone with a single glance. Lin Tian quickly looked away. Staring at a succubus would lead to temptation and loss of self-control, making one a puppet to her will. He then looked to the right. That figure seemed more normal, a man in his 30s. But there was a wealth of information within. He wore a golden cross robe, a garment only the Pope of the Church had. But it was tattered, filthy, with corpse spots on his face, and his eyes were ghostly white, eerie and terrifying. Lin Tian quickly checked with his system. Enzo Corpse LV-100. Level 100. However, he was in a corpse state, likely a former pope revived as a corpse. His strength greatly weakened, but still a formidable 5,900. Everyone stared at Lin Tian with contempt, curiosity, or indifference. Finally, Lin Tian looked at the large throne in the center. It resembled a skull with an open mouth. The person sitting there wore a black and gold coat, with a thorny crown on their head, looking quite frightening. But their appearance was a completely pale skeleton. Much larger than a normal skeleton, matching a human in height and width. Except for the red flames in their eye sockets, there was no other information. Not much distinguished them. However, when Lin Tian used his system, he understood the power gap. No wonder this person was the master of the Great Tomb. Bone King LV-100, overall strength 9,999. Nearly 10,000. Wasn't this insanely powerful? How did the church's elders ever defeat him? Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Lin Tian felt embarrassed under their stares and immediately flattered. "Good evening, honorable and handsome lord." The cannibal eagle trembled. How could this guy be so familiar right off the bat? They were doomed. The succubus covered her face, mocking, "Little guy, our Bone King is a woman." A woman. Lin Tian was full of question marks. How could one tell with just a skeleton? Only a medical professional could determine gender from bones. Seeing Lin Tian's shock, the succubus found it amusing. Finally, the Bone King spoke. "It's fine. I heard you captured Clin Castle and brought the sword Saintess into the tribe. I'm very impressed." Upon hearing her mature and seductive voice, Lin Tian felt his brain shrink a bit. It was unscientific. What did she use to speak? And it was a mature woman's voice. Seeing him not respond, the red light in the Bone King's eyes flared up, scaring everyone. Lin Tian quickly answered, "My lord, it was just luck." HMPH, a lowly goblin achieving such feats, do you think I would believe it was luck? Rest assured, I'm not here to punish you, I intend to reward you. The Bone King continued. The succubus interjected, "To receive the favor of the Lord is your honor." Hey, this guy sure talks a lot. Lin Tian thought to himself and then thanked Thank you, my lord. I also know about the iguana lord. The cannibal eagle reported it was done by one of your subordinates. I know your little scheme. The Bone King spoke, eyes full of disdain. As if nothing could be hidden from her. Lin Tian felt awkward and could only smile bitterly. Then, the Bone King pondered for a moment and said, since you want to plunder the resources of my great tomb, I will allow it. But, you must become the lord of the southern region and the leader of all the monsters in the great tomb. What? At this moment, the other monsters, who were previously bored and playing with their fingers, all changed their expressions. The cannibal eagle was dumbfounded. What was happening? This favor was too excessive. The succubus exclaimed, Honey Tilda, have you gone mad? Even though we don't care about the outside monsters, letting a lowly goblin manage them is inappropriate. Lin Tian, who was previously happy, now had a gloomy expression. This woman, who seemed fine just a moment ago, was now undermining him. He vowed to make her pay if he got the chance.